Yeah, I guess we can just all stand.
Yeah,
for
who
the
needs
time
chairs,
being.
really?
I'm Ted Gagan. I'm a horror filmmaker and an old friend of the amazing director of this film, and I'm super excited to talk to him about it. And with me,
Michael Gingold of Fangoria, Rue Morgue, the Ad Nauseam books, and a longtime fan of this gentleman and his amazing studies of genre film.
And you know who I am, so yeah.
So thank you all very much for coming and for not going to see a Disney movie tonight. I guess the first question is, this is such a wonderfully eclectic group of people. Like Patton Oswald would not be my first choice to talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre necessarily. Yeah. So was there a selection process, or did you kind of have your oh good, we all have cheers.
Okay.
Was there like a large group that you made a selection of, or did you pretty much know you wanted these 5 from the beginning?
It wasn't a large group, but obviously there was a short list. There's the thing about a film like this is, first of all, you need people who are going to be able to carry a chapter, right? So 15, 18, 20 minutes. So they have to be charismatic. They have to have a lot to say. They have to be entertaining, and in this particular case, they have to have, a very sort of personal connection to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So Patton actually, as it turned out, and that was thanks to our editor, David Lawrence, who pointed me to this article that he had written for The New Yorker about the poetry of trailer recutters, and there was specifically this recut trailer for Texas Chainsaw that Patton talks about, and it's just such a beautiful piece that he wrote. And of course, he's done a bunch of pieces for Criterion. He's a massive cinephile. Texas Chainsaw is one of his all-time favorite films. And as we all know, he's an amazingly entertaining and smart human.
he's one of us.
He's one of so that was a no-brainer. And I really loved this being essentially the 50th anniversary film for Texas Chainsaw, the film to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the film. I love the idea of starting with Patton because he's literally, as you said, probably the last person you would expect. And so it immediately subverts the audience's expectations. It's like then you have really no idea where to go. And then you go from Patton to Takashi Miike. And then after that it's like all bets are off, Yeah.
So, in your previous films, you have interviewed people very closely associated with the films that you're studying. So, over the course of your career, you've had some films where you've chosen folks to talk about movies that they've been a part of, and folks talk about movies that they love. Is there any method to that madness in terms of, like, for example, like with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there have been numerous documentaries over the years featuring the cast and crew of the film. So
yeah, so I mean, as you know, I don't make behind the scenes docs. I'm not particularly interested in the anecdotes. I think it's great that they exist. I'm much more interested in the resonance of film, and I'm interested in the zeitgeist. I'm interested in the collective unconscious. I'm interested in why certain films stay with us and have this ripple effect, this chain reaction, as it were, over decades. And so, I mean, that has been my sort of singular obsession. And that obsession now has become, I'm moving away from the sort of film deconstruction of a 7852, which is a film that I made about the psycho shower scene, and getting more and more into the personal, trying to really get into people's mind's eye, trying to get into memories, trying to get into trauma, trying to get into the experience of watching a film, and how watching a film on 35, in a grindhouse movie theater, or watching it on the Australian VHS, how does that color your perception of the film? Those are the things that preoccupy me a lot more now, and I think I'm heading in those kinds of directions. The films I make are not about, I hate the word definitive. This idea that when people release a film or make a film about a film, it's like the definitive film about such and such. I think that's such BS because it's so reductive. Because if you have 10 great filmmakers and you assign them to make a film about Texas Chainsaw, you're going to have 10 great films. And there are going to be 10 completely different films. there is no end to the exploration of the creative process. There's no bottom to it. I could be making films about Texas Chainsaw for the rest of my life and be very happy because there's so many things to explore. And so, as I always say, the joy of doing what I do is to pick the brains of these extraordinary people and to get to re-envision this film that I'm very familiar with, obviously, that I love, but then all of a sudden I get to experience it in a different way. And I think that's, to me, that this is kind of what cinephilia is about. Like, fundamentally, this conversation we're having, like, let's say that you hate Texas Chainsaw and I love it. Like, I would be really, really interested. It's like, well, tell me why you hate it, and I'll tell you why I love it, and then we can have a dialogue about it, and then perhaps, things will come out of that dialogue. I mean, I wish we had that in society a lot more, and in politics, and all of that stuff. Like, what has happened to dialogue, to conversation, to listening to other perspectives, and I think that's what I'm trying to do with the films that I make is, to start a conversation, because it's about the mysteries. It's not about providing answers. I think if anything, when I make a film about a film, by the end of the process, I feel like I know less about the film than when I started. Yeah. And I would like people, when people watch my films, to feel like there's more mysteries and more doors to open by the time they finish watching it, than feeling like, oh, now I know everything that I need to know about this film. Yeah.
So on the other side of that coin, was there anything that you discovered about Texas Chainsaw for yourself in the course of making this film?
Well, I mean, everything, to be honest, has been a discovery. I think that the great joy, by the way, also is, and it's interesting the way that this film has kind of unfolded. Very quickly, it became a film about format and about the different ways in which you can experience a movie. And in fact, I should tell you guys, because we will be releasing the film on Blu-ray in, I think, November is kind of what we've been talking about. And so I'm very proud of the fact that MPI and Dark Sky and the Hinkles and all the people, all the rights holders, decided to go along with this crazy idea I had, which is, how about we release Chain Reactions, but we do a multiple disc box set, and we release multiple transfers of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And we have 8 versions, 8 full versions of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we have, including all the ones that you've seen, so the 35 millimeter Grindhouse, we have 216s, we have the Wizard, the original VHS, Wizard Video, we have the KTEL Australian VHS, we have the abridged Super 8 millimeter, and then we have this absolutely crazy, Czech version, that was smuggled across the border from, back in Czechoslovakian days. That's what I'm talking about. And dubbed by this one person who does all the voices. So yeah, so it's fun stuff.
So the film is a benchmark of horror, but what do you think it is that sets it so far apart from everything else? I mean, we hear the conversations from the people that you've interviewed. We've heard plenty of people over the years. I have my opinion. I'm sure Mike has his opinion on what makes the film set apart. And I'm very curious as to all the wonderful, amazing, iconic horror films out there. What is it about this one for you?
So I think what's remarkable about this particular film, and I think a lot of the great films, by the way, are usually very simple. You look at Texas Chainsaw on a basic level, and it's Hansel and Gretel. That's what it is, right? It's but then of course, when you start really unpacking it, there's a lot more, right? So obviously, it's a film that resonated with the time. It tapped into the zeitgeist, but as Stephen King said, it also preceded. It sort of created its own. Yeah. And the remarkable thing to me is, here we are 51 years after the film opened, and let's look at where we are. So Texas Chainsaw is a film that is very much a film about America tearing itself apart. Okay, it is very much a film about technology replacing people and driving them crazy. I mean, what's happening with with AI? You look at, I mean, heck, Patton Oswald's take on it, and the sun and the apocalyptic sort of aspect of it. You could absolutely look at it as a film about, on some level, climate change. So here's a film that 50 years on is still tapping into issues. It's helping us process things that are extraordinarily current and urgent. And how many films actually do that? So the fact that Texas Chainsaw is back in a big way on its 50th anniversary, and that it's still as resonant as it's ever been. It's a rare movie. I mean, when Takashi Miike says, we need to cherish this film, like, he's not kidding. Like, this is massively important landmark of the movie.
Not just the genre cinema, but all
No.
cinema. Like
All
storytelling.
cinema,
Yeah.
all cinema. I mean, there is nothing, like, if you want to just talk about it in terms of pure craft and what the movie does and continues to do, and the conversations that we're having around the film. I mean, it's funny, you can look back at, a bunch of movies that have won the Oscar for, is anybody having conversations about Shakespeare in Love right now? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I don't think we will 10 years from now. I don't think we will 10 years from now or 20 years from now, whatever. But we're going to continue talking about Texas Chainsaw. So, we have to stop looking down on horror, and I don't know when that's going to happen. As this little genre, we have to stop talking about elevated horror. That when I hear this shit, it really drives me up the wall. I mean, I can't take it because
like, it implies that horror needs to be elevated.
Right,
That
to be
the default
acceptable.
setting is schlock, basically,
Yeah.
is what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, but is there anything more elevated than a film that was made for $60,000 by a bunch of kids, and that 51 years later continues to resonate with the zeitgeist?
Yeah.
You tell me if there's anything that is more relevant and more important than this. I don't think so. So yeah, and then forget about, let's talk about Bob Burns and all the unbelievable set design and all the props. I mean, it's mad stuff.
Yeah.
The performances, are you kidding me? I mean, are you kidding? Like, every single one of those actors, it's extraordinary stuff. Yeah.
I've
Can you
always-
tell I'm passionate about it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've always thought also a large part of the film's success from the beginning has been its title. It probably has the best title for a horror film ever, because it immediately tells you what it's about, and it builds up these expectations, and yet the film itself doesn't quite meet them, in a sense that it is not very bloody. It has violence, but it's not a gore fest. So can you talk about that and the fact that the movie almost kind of succeeded in spite of itself, because it's an emotional experience. It's not a gore experience.
Yeah, but that goes back to, obviously, tricks. It's the and there's a direct line between the psycho shower scene and the editing of that scene, where you think you see a lot more than what you actually do, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where as Karyn talks about the trick of the eye when Leatherface picks up Pam and puts her on the hook. It's just a few frames, but that's what does the trick. And so there is this very clear understanding that of how our brains function and how we connect the dots. And you don't need to show a whole lot to build and create that horror in the mind's eye of the audience. But that doesn't make the film any less of a massacre by chainsaw in Texas. That's the thing, is that film is still incredibly, look, my experience, and I've told this story, many times, but I grew up in Switzerland, in Geneva, and I was watching a lot of horror films from a very young age. Texas Chainsaw is one of those films that I just waited and waited and waited, because, as Patton mentions in the film, it's just a little too, it looks like it's going to mess you up. It looks like it's just more in the movie.
You were worried you weren't ready for it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I was excited, and I was like, I kind of kept delaying because but also, like, I was genuinely, like, kind of, plus the title the French title is even scarier. It doesn't have the word Texas. It's Massacre à la tronçonneuse, which means It's like Massacre by Chainsaw. It's really nasty. Like it's really fucking nasty. And so so I waited, and I was like in my early 20s, and
You really waited.
I really
Early
waited.
20s.
I really
Okay.
waited. It was I was in my early 20s, and I'll tell you. I was in New Haven, Connecticut. I didn't go to Yale, but I was in NYU actually. But I had a girlfriend. I had a girlfriend at the time who was a Yalie. So I would commute every weekend to go see her. And one day, it was a beautiful day. I will always remember the birds. The birds were singing. It was just a lovely day. Middle of the day, and I don't know what sort of came over me. I was like, I'm gonna go to the video store and I'm gonna rent Texas Chainsaw, and I'm gonna get this over with once and for all. So I went and I put it in. It was a small television screen, and first of all, Sally. I mean, those screams. It felt like an hour and a half of it. It was, I couldn't take it anymore. And then we get to the dinner scene, and then these extreme close-ups on her eyeball, and I thought I was losing my fucking mind. I had to stop the film. I had to walk outside, listen to the birds, go around the block a couple of times. Like everything's fine, everything's good. Get my heart rate down, and I went back and I finished the film. And to this day, it's the only film I had to pause or stop because I couldn't take it.
Where was your girlfriend during all of this?
She wasn't there.
Okay.
She wasn't there.
That's how you
I watched
filled
it
your
alone.
time. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where she was.
Wasn't
But-
in the mood to watch Texas Chainsaw.
I guess not. I guess not. I think it is a great date film.
It can be.
It can be, yeah.
Bruce Campbell's had a lot of stories about how he claims Evil Dead's the perfect date film because
Yeah.
everyone wants to snuggle when they're that grossed out and scared.
Yeah.
So speaking of like the greater world of genre cinema, like your documentaries have covered that they stayed almost completely within the world of genre cinema. You have
Almost.
almost exactly. You have stepped out just a scooch.
I tried, but it keeps bringing me back.
And that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. I mean, obviously you're a fan of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy, like I assume everyone in the room. But what is it about this specific category of films that inspires you to tell these stories? Because I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. I've worked for you as a publicist on a number of your films, and you had a film a few years ago that was about Monument Valley. That was not at all about genre cinema, unless we want to put classic westerns also into that. But it very much feels in line with the sort of stories that you tell as a filmmaker. But after that, you jumped right back into horror stuff. So what is it that keeps pulling you back?
I mean, horror, and again, to sort of go back to what I was talking about earlier, it is one of the most, if not the most important genre that we have. And the reason for this is that it is the one genre that is capable of expressing ideas that we need to process collectively in ways that don't feel like on the nose or critical of, whatever it is. It's also, by the way, about connecting with our fears and trying to understand. Stephen King talks about this in Chain Reactions, but understanding our fears, understanding what we're afraid of and why we're afraid of it, is the gateway towards self-knowledge. I mean, our lives are regulated by, what we do or don't do. At the end of the day, it's always fear. Fear is always right there, and it works on a micro level, on a personal level, but it also works on a societal level. And we're seeing a lot of that going on right now, unfortunately. And so I think, horror movies are about, they can help us process allegorically. They can help us process by being cautionary tales. They are essentially rites of passage. They very much function the way that fairy tales back in the day, when they were before they were Disneyfied, used to work.
Yeah.
Right? And so you go into this and you walk out on the other side and now you're an adult. So they're very, very important, and I just, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I'm just really profoundly bothered by the fact that by now, horror should be celebrated as one of the most important, greatest genre, or, they should be, those movies should be in the same absolute category, running for Oscars and Golden Globes or whatever.